In today's episode with John Campbell, we are breaking down the live cattle markets and what we have been seeing over the past week. We got a lot of positive news for you guys coming into this episode. And then into our main topic, John and I are talking about regulations in Canada and what in the world is going on as far as traceability and EIDs and all of the other nuances, and then how that relates to us as US producers. We're talking about Canada today, but what does that mean for you here in the United States on your operation and what we need to be doing now so that we don't end up in those same shoes? Before we hop into today's episode, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button and you like this episode. Leave your thoughts on what we're talking about down in the comments as well. Start some discussions there. And if you're listening on any of our other podcasting platforms, make sure you take a second to make sure you're following the show and go rate and review it as well. Without further ado, let's go ahead and hear from John. John, welcome back to the podcast once again. How is life in lovely Lahana? We were just talking about the fact that you have gotten more snow in Lahana than we have gotten all year. And I'm pretty sure you got more snow this week than the mountains have even gotten in Colorado.
We did. We got about 5 or 6 inches here Friday night, I guess. And of course, the weather said we were supposed to get an inch, and we got 5. So it had some moisture in it. We're here. If you don't know where Lahana's at, why, we're lower than the armpit, but we're in that part of the anatomy there. It's dry and we're just, dry country, and we don't normally get a lot of moisture. And one thing too, it doesn't take a lot of moisture. It's more about the timing here, but we're just an inch over any desert in the world as far as rainfall goes.
Pretty
But we'll
much.
take
I know you guys.
it was wet, you know. Everybody's excited. And I think it went east, Dodge City and through there got good moisture. And so yeah, it'll help.
Yeah, 100%. I love it. Well, on that note, how did the markets do this week? Did the weather affect them? How are we feeling? Give us the rundown on what happened in Lahana and kind of the region as well.
No, we had a few cancellations locally on account of the weather, and they'll be coming next week, but not very many. Right at 6,000 cattle here in Lahana this week. Uh, I thought the lightweight steer calves, you call them 10 to 20 higher again this week. They just catch fire and they just keep going. The heavy steer calves, I called them 4 to 10 better, and the heifer calves pretty much steady with last week, but I called them sharply higher last week, and so pretty much steady on them. 4-weight steer calves up to 620. We had some 535-pound steers bring 514. That certainly would have been better. I think 503 or 4 was the best we did last week. You get into kind of the stocker weight steers, and you could really see it there on those 550 to 650 weight cattle. I thought they were another $10 better, and the feeding steers 5 to 15 higher. 6-weight cattle up to 458. I mean, these cattle are bringing $2,800 a head. 120-pound steers here right at $4 a pound, and 830 weight cattle to 367. Over on the heifer side, little 4-weight heifers up to 530 a pound. 5-weight heifers at 448. Again, the stocker heifers, they were probably higher. I call the light heifers steady, but some of those handy weight heifers, you call them $10 higher, in spots a little more. Our feed and heifer market steady. It sure wasn't any cheaper, in spots a couple bucks better. We had some 600-pound black heifers bring 422 and a half. Really fancy. As a matter of fact, they're going back to the country. Somebody will breed them. Some 750-pound Charolais cross. They don't all have to be black. Brought 351, would have topped our market here, and 880-pound blacks at 308. So awfully good. Big run up in the commodities market on Tuesday. Sure didn't hurt anything. They sold them off yesterday, Wednesday. We're recording on Thursday. They've got them back up 400 points again today. So I don't know. The train keeps going. It's going up.
Oh, yeah. Hold on tight, boys. It's been a good one. I mean, I can't complain. A lot of people across the region can't complain. It's been a good week if you're in the selling position. What are we seeing kind of across the region? Is that playing into Wyoming, our Dodge City, our Salina locations, all of those as well? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah. Jeff's going to have a special sale next week at Winter Livestock in Riverton. Didn't have that many this week, but Salina, Kansas, at our market in Salina, again, a pretty good test. They had 3,000 cattle and called it 8 to 25 higher. I mean, I look at our market and I think, my gosh, that's runaway. And they're little steers about like, excuse me, about like ours, 4 weight steers up to 615, but they had some 5 weight cattle to 565 and some 6 weight steers up to 465. And if our 7 weight cattle brought $4, they brought 418. It's just unbelievable. The weights under uh, 600 pounds, they would have called their heifers higher. 4 weight heifer at 555, a 5 weight heifer at 480. Their best 6 weight heifer brought 412, but then sell some 730-pound feeding heifers in Salina at 368. Dodge City with 2,475 cattle. I thought, really good 5 to 5. They didn't have a lot of light cattle in Dodge, but the 550 to 7 weight steers, a day later, 10 to 15 higher. And the heifers, pretty much similar to ours, steady to as much as 10 higher. 5 weight steers in Dodge, about like ours. 512 was the best they did. Same way on their 6 weights, 453. That'd be, two, three, $4 within our highs. And then they'd sell some 7 weight cattle in Dodge as well for $4. Their heifer deal, 5 weight heifers, 476. And again, on these, I'm telling you about the very best, but they would do some volume at those numbers. I'd be telling you not about onesie twosies. 6 weight heifers up to 410 and 7 weight heifers there in the heart of feeding country at 363. So light cattle market real similar to ours. And yesterday in Dodge City, why their heifers would have again been a little stronger than what we got along. All in all, nobody's calling anything any cheaper across the country. Most people steady, strong. Do the general consensus would be that everything was a little higher. People that have orders or coming to the sale with the last week's prices in mind aren't getting much done. Add to the kitty to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been a good week pretty well across the board for everyone selling. And so it's really encouraging to continue to start out our 2026 in this light and with some positivity and with some good things. As long as, everyone else keeps their mouth shut about the cattle market, hopefully we can continue to see this go for at least a little bit longer and milk it as long as we can for those producers out there that are selling right now. So, well, change of topic, John. I want to talk about our friends to the north and some government regulation for our lovely Canadian friends and all the things that are just going on there. And get your thoughts and your opinions and raw, unfiltered, John, on what in the hell is happening in Canada, John.
Well, I think I make the comparison because there are our neighbors to the north, and this is the reg now. This is the way the regulations read, and you must comply by. And it's the CFIA, which is the Canadian Cattle Identification Agency, and they just put it out. They were going to have some meetings with some producers around to explain to them what they've done to them. They can't do anything about it, but we'll explain to you what we did to you. And it's about just mandatory computer reporting, and the responsibility is on the producer. And anytime you move cattle and they've got a PowerPoint presentation, I'll go over it, but all that has to be recorded within 7 days of when it happens. And I just think it's full of holes. Just basically, the first thing that you have to have years ago, they were even making 4-H kids here have a premise ID number. Well, that is mandatory. You got to know where the cattle are at, and that has to be ID'd with a number. And it sounds pretty easy. Well, hell, just whatever your address is, why, that's what your premise ID number is. But, do I need an ID number for where I live or where my processing pens are? Remember, we're trying to trace disease here, so we need to know where they're going and where my pasture is, even if it's out in the middle of nowhere. Those pastures have no ID number. The world is full of huge pastures and wheat fields that set out in the middle of nowhere that absolutely are miles and miles from any kind of a premise. They're a hot wire around several hundred acres that are 40 miles from the nearest road. What the hell? How do you record that premise ID number? The government is so excited about knowing exactly what cattle are at that location, and the location has no ID number. But the problem goes on in that these pastures that are unfenced, a lot of them are commingled. The pasture is with state land or with federal land, or federal land or state land overlaps into, you have a state land lease, but it sets out, overlaps into your private ground. Well, what's the state land ID number or premise ID number? And like I said, those are intermingled with private land within a pasture. A kind of a typical scenario, a truck loads cattle or unloads into a set of portable pens, which happens on wheat fields all the time, South, North Dakota. I've loaded cattle there. They're full of them. Everybody owns a set of those wheeled pens with a chute on them. They don't have a permanent facility at every pasture they own. So how do you get a premise ID with them? And whose premise ID do you use if that's what they want to know, where the cattle were unloaded? We were talking a little bit beforehand. I know of huge ranches in New Mexico that are from anywhere from 50 to 100 sections in one pasture. Nevada would be full of them. New Mexico is made of them. And then within the pasture, and I'm getting cattle actually off of that ranch here in 2 days, there's a subdivision in the middle of the pasture, and I guarantee you there's 50 homes within that pasture, and some of those guys own 1 acre, some of them own 100 acres. But you're leasing that area that's comprised of who knows how many different premise ID points. And and some of those guys by law, they have to fence the cattle out. It's not the guy running on the ground. It's the same way here in Colorado. You have to fence me out. Well, my cattle are going to run on your premise. Do I have to record that ID because they ate a bunch of chicken guts out of a trough you had out for your dog, and then we've got an epidemic going on? Well, it started at that premise, but I can guarantee you of those houses in that subdivision, unless they've got a little Shetland pony, they don't have a premise ID. Some of them move out there and say, oh, well, hell, this land ain't worth nothing, just sell me 100 acres of it. And you're running on that, but the guy has no premise ID, doesn't even know what you're talking about because he doesn't own any livestock. And so anyway, your traceability deal, and I can't imagine that Canada doesn't have the same scenario that we would have in the United States. Your premise ID is already ended even before it started, because so many places in rural America have no common reference where you can even register a premise ID. And in this Canadian deal, the PowerPoint regulations go on to say that specifically when and where you have to scan and read these ID numbers. An example here would be if you make an appointment with your veterinarian, whether you're taking a cow in, whether you're going to fertility test a bull or whatever, you need to enter, you, Mr. Producer, need to enter into your computer where you load it, and this is mandatory, the license plate of your pickup and your trailer that's hauling the cattle, your premise ID, and the premise ID of where you're taking these cattle. Remember, it's all about traceability now, where you unloaded, and name every individual ID of every animal that you put on the trailer and where you unloaded them and the date and the time. And I can guarantee you, we have a vet facility right across the street. And without fail, you take a cow to the vet or a bull to the vet, and then you go to the sale. I mean, you just make one trip. You buy 15 head of cows at the cattle auction while you got your cow or your bull over there at the vet shop. Well, then when you load everything back up, well, you bought too many cows, so you got to have your neighbor help you haul them. And the neighbor's rig, you'll need to know what his premise ID is, what his license plate on his pickup and trailer is. He takes part of your cows and you take your one, or he takes your one bull back. Well, he's got to scan each one of these cows that he loads on that specific carrier. And your livestock haulers are going to love it because they'll all they've got a split load going three different places because they're trying to fill their truck. Well, hell, the guy that bought the cattle doesn't even know where he wants to unload them at. So how in the hell is he going to give him a premise ID number? And then, like this guy, unless you had your handy dandy scanning wand in your hip pocket, well, shit, the neighbor helped you. He didn't bring his wand with him. And then on the way home, why, he decides he wants to buy 3 of your cows. Well, shit. So he drops off 3 cows, gate cut. He needs to scan them and enter his premise ID of where he unloaded them and the time. And then, without fail, Lauren, you want him to put 7 cows in the north pasture, then haul 3 cows over here to grandma's place, and the rest of them, why, I need to go to Junction City with them and turn them out. And incidentally, you have to scan that specific cow that goes to grandma's place. It can't just be one of the cows that you bought. It has to be the number off that individual cow. And we go right down the list, and that happens every day. You know, he gates cuts the cows out of there, and you dump them at 2 different places. Well, you better get ready and get your wand ready because you got to scan the first 3 that come out of the deal, and then document the time and the premise ID, which doesn't exist, of where the hell you unloaded them, you know. And in the meantime, since you forgot your scanner, oh yeah, those cows, incidentally, those 3 cows commingled with 100 other ones in the same pasture. So good luck finding which 3 you just unloaded because they're all black cows and happen at 3 different locations plus the ones you kept. And it's just that's just one of the PowerPoints that they've got. It's moving into community pastures is another thing. We have hundreds of thousands of cattle that run on forests, Lauren, that are commingled with other people's cattle. Well, it's your responsibility as the producer to know where they're at, which specific cows you own are in which specific pasture, and you've got a rider up there that'll move those cattle. Well, anytime they're moved to a premise ID spot, well, you've got to record that and be responsible for which cows were moved. Carcass disposal is another one. Wait a minute, Mr. Dead Wagon Driver, I didn't get your name of where you're taking this carcass or this dead cow, what its premise ID number is, and I missed because you had a bunch of guts on your license plate. I couldn't read that. And would you mind if my wife would crawl up on the dead pile and scan that cow's number? I sure as hell need to know which cow you just drug up on there. On-farm disposal. Now that's another PowerPoint. And Lauren, it is documented. I'm just creating scenarios that I guarantee are going to happen. They're telling you that's the regulation. It's my favorite because here's my potential computer entry on my on-farm disposal. Wolf killed 3 calves, found where he drug and buried 2 of them, and I got their numbers. I took my scanner and got those dead ones. But he ate the ears off the other calf. But I was able, within the mandatory 7-day recording time, to shoot and gut the wolf. And now I'm proud to say that my report includes not only the 15-digit calf number that I entered, but also the tracking number off the dead wolf collar. So, you got to look at the positive side of it. Hell, you wanted the number, and so here you go. But it's just crazy. Within 7 days, record all the births and deaths of every animal on your ranch. I'm back to my scenario. The guy that has the ranch with 80 sections, you think he's out there tagging and has 40, 50, 60 calves in a day over 80 sections? And he's going to be out there tagging those cows so he can fall in compliance with the 7 day window that you've got to tag them. I don't give a damn if you got 50 cows, 100 cows, or 500 cows. You will not get them all scanned with your, they have the, what they call the CLTS Mobo phone app. Then you'll get that on your phone, and you're going to you scan all those calves and then upload the information to your Excel file through their web portal, because part of the problem will be, hell, when you're out there doing that shit, you're in the middle of nowhere and you didn't have any cell service to begin with. How in the hell are you know what I mean? How are you going to download all this stuff to them? But it's asking you do the work, you comply the data, and you share the information. I've figured out how they're going to pay for it and how they're going to get the manpower to record all the data and do this. Well, hell, we'll just have the producer do it. Let him do it. He's going to keep all the records, and these things start in these committees, and I would love to see the group of geniuses that they assembled when they set up the regulations and the protocol with this Canadian government. And it's their agri-food division. Can't you? I mean, who with any practical sense would have let this stuff become a regulation? But it's a regulation now. It's on the books. You do it. And we sat around and we let this stuff go through, and it can't be done. There is no practical application for what the hell they're talking about. Like you and I mentioned, hell, if you've got 9 cows on 5 acres and you're sitting out there with your headlamp on a bucket waiting for the calve so you can calve her, yeah, that sounds good and great. Hell, anybody ought to be able to do that. But, this committee, if it's anything like we would have here in the United States, I'm sure it's overloaded with special interests. I learned a new term, ENGOs, which are environmental, non-governmental organizations. And they're out there, and we talked about some of them, the Bezos Earth Fund, this, that. They infiltrate and they donate huge sums of money to government entities so they can be involved in the discussion. And they can be part of the narrative because they just give you $3 million. And why do you think the company that sells the ear tags, or the two or three of them, hell, yes, we'd be happy to sponsor the roast beef dinner, and incidentally, we'll rent the entire 5th floor of the Hilton Convention, and give all the committee members a coupon for a free cocktail and a back rub. Hell, why in the hell else do you think they're there? Shit, they want in on the narrative and on the ground floor with the government on how all this is going to come down, and they got no idea how to implement, but they damn sure want to be there to sell the tags. And of course, I'm sure the Canadian Beef Council is there because now they're assured of a revenue source every time a tag is read. Did I mention that JBS is sponsoring the entire first day at the NCBA convention this year? Just putting two and two together there for a minute. And of course, every purebred breed association that, this guy has 9 cows, this guy has 20, maybe this guy has 100. Well, shit, he can look out his back window and see every one of them. And these purebred guys just can't understand why in the hell everybody doesn't have a chute there, and you can run them through the chute every time you want to move them. And then, of course, the token Miss Daisy Hickenlooper, who we would have here in Colorado, who is, by the way, representing all independent cattle producers. And Daisy's husband is a retired P&S agent, and Daisy has 3 Highlander cows, 2 Boer goats, and a pot-bellied pig. So you talk about a producer that is diversified. She's our gal, and I've been to a lot of them, and there's one in every committee. This particular gal draws a lot of attention because she's got her matching pink straw hat she bought at the stock show and her moon boots on. There's one in every group. You ever notice that? And that's our liaison person for the producers, because hell, she's the only one that's got time enough to go to all the meetings. But the veterinarians will sure be there because they're going to be animal identification device managers. And there's an application that you can fill out if you want to be a device manager. And they want to be able to ensure that they can distribute the tags and the tag readers and sell all that crap at full retail. But mainly, they want to be damn sure that it's the producer's responsibility and to provide the infrastructure, the reading, the recording, and the managing all the data, and not the veterinarians. So they're damn sure on the committee. Why? Okay, this is up in Canada, or you hear about it in this foreign country. Why do Canadian regulations now, why are they so important? You don't have to look very far and to read that our own USDA has documented, and they have people, I don't think their leadership is now, but they have people in the USDA that are committed, and like I said, they've documented multiple times that they will in fact implement an ID system that tracks cattle from birth to slaughter. That's part of their mission statement. They documented, it's there. I've had vets that work here even 4 or 5 years ago say, John, get ready, as I'm telling you, it's coming. And I get to thinking there's more of a conspiracy out there all the time. The more you looked into this, but it's called collective control. The more data they can collect, the more they can control the outcome or the scenario that exists out there. Lauren, those producers that because of their age or their financial limits or facility requirements, or as I mentioned, even logistics, there's no way they can comply. Well, those people, the little guys or the guys that it is physically impossible to comply, they're going to be forced out. You either comply or you can't do business. And we do have one person in Wyoming, Harriet Hegman, and she is an advocate for ranchers and producers, and she has even said a statement that I think everybody should adhere to. It's not about collecting all the information, the government collecting all the information. And I think this really hits home. It's about what they can do once they have the information collected. And that comes from one of our own congressmen that's belly deep into the conversation. Again, collect so you can control. And we've got states like California that already has a cap on how much carbon you can produce and how big your footprint is, and forcing you to buy carbon credits if your feet get too big. And you can buy them. You can buy them from a solar-powered windmill, or you can install a methane digester. Ireland, and again, this is far-reaching, but it just kind of substantiates what I said. They adopted an EID tagging program for cattle in 2022. The next year, they ordered the slaughter of 41,000 cattle in Ireland to reduce global warming, because now they knew they could measure it, they collected the data, so then they can control the narrative and they can control the output. True statement. And we sit back and we think, oh hell, that isn't going to happen. It's happening. It's here. That everything that I told you, those PowerPoints that I put out, taking them to the vet, writing the license plate number down, every animal at every location, all the time, anytime you move them, that's a regulation now in Canada. It's on the books. You got to do it. Well, hell, how's some, little guy in Missouri going to comply with all that? Hell, he doesn't even castrate a bull, let alone ear tag him, and he has no facility. So you eliminate that guy, and we get more and more concentrated and more this vertical up and down, and it squeezes the people that can't comply out.
Yeah. I think it goes
Other than
down to
that, I think it's a great idea.
other than just a couple talking points, you just have a few edits, right?
Well,
Not many. Just a couple suggestions, right?
but
Like
but I
just
mean,
slight.
we're next. I mean, we're on
We
the
are.
list, and
Yeah.
it's how I feel for those people in Canada, and hopefully they can, but I've been down that road before, and I have proven to government people that it is impossible to comply. And here are the facts. It's already a law. So what they've done to me is, well, I see. No, there would be no way you can comply. Well, pay a $2,500 fine and we'll go on to the next deal. True fact. True fact. Colorado has a law where they have to certify scales in the country. And Colorado has the certification. If you trade cattle in the country, you only have to test it one time a year. A video company, a country salesperson, someone that has a livestock auction like we do, we're required to test the scale twice a year. Well, because we're handling the transaction and we're classified under an auction, any scale that we weigh on has to be tested twice a year. But yet, the state of Colorado does not employ enough people, nor do the weights and measure companies, to go around and test every scale twice. Physically impossible. They do not have the manpower to do it. And so, guess what? They don't get tested. So you are not in compliance because the tail, I think we finally got it changed to within 6 months, but it needs to be tested twice a year. Well, Mr. Rancher, you're not in compliance. So here you go, 2,500 bucks. And that's a true story. And I wrote the check. So,
Where does it end?
and
I
then
think
you
that's
say,
the
well,
question.
what have we accomplished here? P&S, what have we done? Where we go, well, we just try to do better and nothing changed. And we're going to go on to something else next time. But that's the problem with so much of this. These regulations are made, they're put in place, and there's no one, absolutely no one with a practical grasp or boots on the ground person that knows how any of this is going to be implemented because nobody that's doing the work is represented on the committee. But yet the law goes through. So here we are. So just saying, Harriet Hagman is from Wyoming, and she is a congresswoman there, and she's running for the Senate, and I hope she wins. But boy, if she could get you in contact with people, or you need to get in contact with people that they're taking this way too far, and there's no way the way it is specifically outlined can ever be put in place, and it will absolutely destroy commerce. And you can't do it as a producer. And that in Canada, that's where all of it's going to. The producer's responsible for all of it, which I don't like, but I sure as hell don't want it. We can't do it here either. I mean, if you saw how we handle our vet's got three of those readers. Hell, he says there none of them work. You're out there scanning the son of a buck as she's running by you, or else you're going to take everybody's cattle that's going out of state and run them through the chute again and read every tag because they've been commingled after the sale. No, nobody will tolerate it. We could do it. We can damn sure do it. But Warren, it might be 3 days before you get your cows home. And I don't know who's going to pay for the ones that get crippled or down or the feed or all the expense that goes along with implementing this government program. Like I said, an answer to a problem we don't have.
Exactly. Exactly. Where does it end, too? Like, we don't have this problem right this second, but we have seen it play out in a few too many other countries, and it's getting a little too close to home. And then if this gets implemented, where does the ball stop rolling? What's the next domino that's going to fall? I think is a serious question that people need to start asking and get really serious about what this looks like. And our voices need to be heard as producers. We need to be on those committees. We need to be in those rooms. We need to be talking about this. That way it doesn't get implemented on us with no control. and no execution. And that's the biggest problem, right? Who's executing this? How is it being executed? Why are we doing this in the first place? All of these things that, like, so we could sit here for hours, John, and talk about every
Sure,
single point
sure.
on this policy that is wrong and that they need to change and all of these things. But where did the dominoes stop falling?
I don't know. And you can go like me and throw rocks at it and make up a scenario, but the scenarios that I related are everyday deals. They happen all the time. People share work, they share help. And you mean to tell me I got to know the color, the sex, the EID number, and the brand, hot brand if they've got it. And I'm going to somewhere and I'm going to unload in the middle of the night, and hell, I don't know what his premise ID number is, so I guess there's more to the equation than, as I've said before, than disease traceability, because you're not, but to put all of this on the producer, and then they'll have to put some teeth with it. There'll be masses of people that absolutely cannot comply. And so
Absolutely.
you're taking their liberty away, and you're taking their independence away and forcing them out of business. And we'll just deal with the people that can handle it and that we can control and that will fall in line with this bullshit scenario we've manufactured.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Really big
anyway,
question.
it's like I said, I think Rollins has, hopefully she has come to the realization of some of that. But I made reference to, and that's a big deal, these non-governmental corporations that get involved in the narrative. That's not good. It doesn't matter what party they come from. They're in it to make a buck, and to sell. They're no different than last week we talked about Jeff Bezos giving $3 million to the University of Nebraska to study methane, and grouping with USDA and governmental agencies taking outside money to help fund these projects. It doesn't matter what the project is. You can't have a mixing of those two entities and think it's going to be not partial to one persuasion. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. You make some really, really good points, and I think it's important for producers to understand some global points and news that are happening and how that is affecting us here in the States and how it could affect us in the future. And pretty stay diligent on the policies that are being put into place, who we're voting into
Yeah.
office, the decisions that are being made. All of those things will come back and play a factor in how we are allowed to raise our cattle, how we are allowed to go about our operations, and what that's going to look like for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and the next 50 years. Ag is going to continue to change. The beef industry is going to continue to change, but it's important that we are the people having those discussions and that we're letting our voices be heard so that people that live in a brownstone aren't the ones making the decisions for us actually living on the ranch. So,
Well,
John,
and,
you
and
made some.
by the time, like those poor producers in Canada, by the time they get wind of the specifics, the regulation's already in place. And it sounds all right. Well, hell, just put a ear tag in them. And then, Lauren, you own that ear tag. If there's a problem, why call me? That's traceable back to me. But when you have to start writing the license plate number down and the premise ID number of when and where you move one down the road 5 miles to a different premise, and you become, all the specifics start coming out in this, and it's a logistics, a commerce, and a bookkeeping nightmare.
Yeah, all of it. It's
And
a.
everybody up there's dumbfounded because now, after they put the rig through there, they're just finding out, oh shit, we got to do this. We got to do this to implement. Too late now, unless you got somebody pretty congressional strength that. But I'm here to tell you that they don't care. You get it done, and if you can't get it done, we'll fine you to your knees until you either quit or do get it done. And we see it all the time. And It makes no sense. It can't be done. It can't be performed, but yet we make a law out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a cluster. If I have ever seen one, that is for dang sure. Cluster, and fill in the word that you'd like to put in after that for whatever your viewing ears decide, but it's a cluster. And
I like the
it's a
peanut
mess.
and the almond
Yes. Yes.
cluster. Yeah,
Yes.
I knew
Yes.
that's what you're
Those
going
are my
for.
favorite too. Those are
They
my
are good.
favorite as well. So, yes, they're pretty great. They're
Cashews,
pretty great.
little expensive, but they're good.
They are good. It's a real luxury when you get some cashew clusters, I tell you what. Tell you what. Alrighty, well, John, this was a great discussion as always. It's really important that United States producers continue to stay diligent on what is happening and how we can continue to just watch out for things that might be trickling down the road. And as the dominoes fall, trying to do what we can to change those paths in any way possible. So, John, thank you for your insight. Thank you for your thoughts. To all of our listeners out there, thank you for listening to another episode of the Cattle USA Daily Podcast. Have a great rest of your weekend, y'all, and we will see you on Monday. Have a good one, y'all.